The design of planned attacks on buildings inside the U.S. and how operatives were directed to carry them out. That is valuable information for those responsibility to protect the American people. He told us the operatives had been instructed to ensure that the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping. He gave us information that helped uncover Al-Qaeda cells' efforts to obtain biological weapons.
This is Building 7, a 47-story skyscraper that fell on the afternoon of September 11th.
The government says that fire brought it down. However, 1,500 architects and engineers concluded it was a controlled demolition.
Over 6,000 of my fellow service members have given their lives.
And thousands of my fellow first responders are dying.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
I'm a structural engineer.
I'm a New York City correction officer.
I'm an Air Force pilot.
I'm a father who lost his son.
We're Americans, and we deserve...
I lost my husband.
My son.
My uncle.
My nephew. September 11th, 2001.
Most people don't know a third tower fell that day.
The government says fire brought it down.
The collapse of World Trade Center 7 was primarily due to fires.
I, along with 1,400 other architects and engineers,
have found the government's conclusion to be physically impossible.
Impossible.
We need the truth about what happened that day.
Go to rememberbuilding7.org.
Why it fell, why it matters, and what you can do.
Have always been waged by the ruling master class for conquest, power, and profit, and the subject class have always fought their battles. It wasn't until the close of World War I that soldiers began to ask why they were killing and being killed. The League of Nations was the money cartel's first attempt at world control, but Tsar Nicholas II of Russia caught on to their plot and sabotaged it. That proved to be a deadly mistake. Schiff, Warburg, Rockefeller, Harriman, and Morgan backed the uprisings that led to the 1917 Russian Revolution. Their strategy was to finance both sides of wars and revolutions, which gave them control over the winners, the losers, and the outcome.
The execution and removal of the bodies took 20 minutes. 3 centuries of Tsarist Russia were gone.
Between 1918 and 1921, 14 million Russians died from war and starvation under Lenin's Bolsheviks. By 1919, Lenin ran up a national debt to the Rothschild banksters of $60 billion, which put Russia firmly under their control. As Mayor Rothschild once said, "Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes her laws." To this day, the Rothschilds have stopped the heirs to the Tsar's fortunes from claiming their deposits held in Rothschild banks. Those fortunes are now worth an estimated $50 billion. Joseph Stalin, who was financed by the same money cartel, replaced Lenin as Russia's brutal new dictator. Using terror and death threats, Stalin's job was to industrialize Russia and turn communism into a powerful counterforce to democracy. Manufactured conflicts between these two powerful political forces would be the ideal excuse for all future wars and for dividing, conquering, and ruling the world. The Roaring Twenties was a decade of peace and prosperity in the United States.
And installment plans were created to make buying high-priced items more affordable. Instead of shelling out $100 for a new washing machine, consumers would put $5 down and pay $8 a month. The dangers of debt and high interest rates didn't enter the minds of most Americans, and shopping raged throughout the decade. Advertising became part of the fabric of American culture as ads dominated newspapers and magazines. Sex appeal, social snobbery, outrageous claims, and fabricated scientific studies convinced consumers to buy more.
With massive corporate growth, high employment, and a post-war bull market on Wall Street, first-time American investors went on a stock market buying spree.
One wanted a piece of this prosperity. People bought stock on margin or credit for as little as 10% down. They then used the stock as collateral to borrow more money to buy more stock. Then they did it again. The market was a free-for-all with no regulations of any kind.
The party ended on October 29, 1929, when the stock market crashed and caught everyone off guard, everyone except the banksters. J.P. Morgan and Kuhn and Loeb sent advance warnings to their group of insiders. These Federal Reserve pirates caused the crash by printing a whopping 62% inflation rate, then raising interest rates to an alarming 6%. While the Rothschilds, Warburgs, and other Federal Reserve pirates escaped the fallout, outsiders lost everything, some of them leaping to their death from office towers. 30 of the 80 billion that industrial stocks had been worth vanished into thin air, but thin air was just another name for the international banksters. Following the crash, the Great Depression put 1/3 of the U.S. workforce out of work. The bankster-owned banks foreclosed on property and took possession of people's homes and farms. When panicked citizens lined up at banks to withdraw their hard-earned savings, the banksters gave them only 10 cents on the dollar. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow decided to do something about it. Homeless and desperate, many Americans set up tent cities and rode the rails looking for work.
I went walking that riverless highway. I saw above me an inland skyway. Saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. For Eden, a paradise to live in or see. But believe it or not, you won't find it so hot if you ain't got the do-re-mi.
We don't want to overlook the fact that this country was on the brink of hell. We were looking and searching for anything to get us out of this mess. Communism looked very, very attractive to people. We're going to share everything, and you're not going to have to worry about being out of a job. We're going to be one great big happy family. There was a lot of baloney. You weren't, but that we believed it.
Either on the trains or in jungles, you do get to talking about what this means in a broader sense, the social struggle. Why does it have to be this way when the goddamn guys on Wall Street all got millions of dollars? And I can remember being aware of the difference between the working class and the ruling class in this society, to put it in the terms that I use today.
The boys coming chanting and the fog was lifting. This land was made for you and me.
Congressman Louis McFadden, chairman of the House Banking Committee, claimed the crash was planned by the international bankers who sought to become rulers of us all. In his famous 1932 congressional address, he said, "Mr. Chairman, we have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Banks. The Federal Reserve Board has cheated the people of the United States out of enough money to pay the national debt 3 times over. This evil institution has impoverished and ruined the people of the United States through the defects of the law which it operates and through the corrupt practices of the moneyed vultures who control it. Some people think the Federal Reserve banks are government institutions. They are not government institutions. They are private credit monopolies which prey upon the people of the United States for the benefit of themselves." Following a series of death threats, McFadden died from food poisoning, followed by a heart attack under suspicious circumstances. In his book, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, Professor Anthony B. Sutton shows documented evidence that U.S. corporations supplied money, gas, vehicles, and weaponry that helped Hitler launch World War II. Prescott Bush, father of George Bush and grandfather of George W. Bush, supplied raw materials and funneled vast sums of money and credit to Hitler's Third Reich. Under Trading with the Enemies Act, the U.S. government seized businesses operated by Prescott Bush and Skull and Bonesman Averell Harriman, including New York's Union Banking Corporation. These seizures were based on evidence that Bush and Harriman had been operating front organizations for Hitler's Third Reich. Their German partner was the notorious Nazi industrialist named Fritz Thyssen, who wrote a book of confessions called I Paid Hitler. Professor Sutton lists Rockefeller Standard Oil, Henry Ford's Ford Motor Company, J.P. Morgan's General Electric, ITT, and the DuPonts as suppliers for Germany's rearmament program. But why on earth would Jewish bankers and corporations finance a monster like Adolf Hitler? It is a well-known fact that Adolf Hitler went to great lengths to cover up his family history, even arranging for the assassination of Austrian Chancellor Dollfuss, who investigated Hitler's family. The Dollfuss file, now in the hands of the British Secret Service, revealed that Adolf Hitler's grandmother, named Maria Anna Schicklgruber, worked in Vienna as a live-in housemaid at Solomon Rothschild's manor next to his hotel. The information was traced through her compulsory registration card. Solomon Rothschild was one of Mayor Rothschild's 5 banker sons. Separated from his wife, Solomon had a reputation with police as a lecherous womanizer. When Maria Anna Schicklgruber's pregnancy was discovered, she was dismissed. Adolf Hitler, the grandson of Solomon Rothschild, earned a reputation as the most evil man the world has ever known. But more evil than Adolf Hitler were the men who created and financed him. Hitler's revolutionary activities in Germany landed him in prison for 5 years. This so-called prison was Landsberg Castle, a comfortable, privileged pastoral setting where Hitler was groomed for the job of Führer. His coaches, Rudolf Hess and Hermann Göring, helped him write the infamous book Mein Kampf.